I guess I'm ready to talk about this publicly now. As much as I wanted to pretend it never happened and not talk about it, I think it's a bit unfair of me to not explain the incident, especially with how I sprung it on everyone so suddenly, then try to ignore it and move on like nothing happened. That wasn't a good thing for me to do when several of you asked what was going on. So if you're out of the loop or just don't pay attention to community posts, I was attacked outside my home on Sunday, July 24th. The aftermath resulted in a bleeding forearm and my neck was bleeding too, accompanied by several bruises all over my back. I'll go into detail in a few seconds, but let me say something first. As much as I appreciated all of the comments on the initial community post, this is not something that's a joking or lighthearted manner. I saw some jokes here and there that I will not detail, and I'll just be blunt and say that I don't appreciate that. This isn't a game, this is reality. There's a time and place for that, and this isn't one of them, so please leave the jokes and jest at the door. I doubt I'll even hurl any myself in this video, because I just want to get it over with. Not wasting any more time, I'll explain. I was in this position to be attacked because my car is locked behind a gate in the yard, so I have to walk down the street to fetch it. On my way to the gate, a black sedan pulled up beside me and a trio of teenagers were in it. My sixth sense immediately told me that they were trouble, especially when one of them in the back seat had his phone out, obviously filming me, the little shit. The one in the front passenger seat asked me something about a cookie. Clearly it was a stupid Zoomer joke that my nearly 30-year-old brain wasn't even going to bother with trying to comprehend, so I just told them I didn't know what they were talking about and I walked away. But that nagging sixth sense was just nibbling on me again because the situation just didn't feel right. So I turned my head back at them for confirmation just to clear my nerves, and my eyes immediately zoned in on what appeared to be a gun pointed at me. It was an easy mistake. It looked like a high-power weapon, fired like one, and it sounded exactly like one when the rounds went off. All that was flowing through my mind at that point was, I'm getting shot. It finally happened to me. I'm a victim of a drive-by shooting, and I'm about to die. I was at near point blank range, so the first two shots to my forearm and neck were especially painful, which is why they drew blood. I instinctively made some distance to flee, but after about the fourth shot, I began to realize the rounds weren't actually fatal. They were fucking paintballs. And I thought back to the kid with his phone in the back seat. This was just some sick joke, and here I was, just humiliated in broad daylight as I just stopped feeling the last rounds. If you look on screen, this is what I was wearing that day. This t-shirt had so many holes in it after the attack, and that put it into a different perspective. It wasn't just a sick prank. It was one with absolute malicious intent to seriously injure me. That paintball gun was clearly modified to fire faster rounds than it was supposed to, otherwise I wouldn't have bled like I did. This baseball cap quite literally may have saved me from a fatal brain injury because one of the rounds did hit my head, but that only caused me to drift into another train of thought. Various scenarios that started with, if that was a real gun, stuff like that. It became less about that specific attack and more about how vulnerable I am to a true deadly attack. At that moment, I couldn't differentiate between a real and fake gun. So much adrenaline pumped through me just trying to get away, not concerned with the legitimacy of the weapon or its lethality. I had something pointed at me, aimed at me, and all I had in my pocket was a knife to defend myself. Some people like to downplay drive-by shootings, saying ignorant stuff implying how much better they can avoid it and such. No, that's a terrible way of thinking. And if you're a target, all of your fancy maneuvers won't mean shit when instincts take over, especially when it's your first experience with having a fucking weapon pointed at you. I live in a terrible neighborhood that has only gone further down the rabbit hole as years pass. Drive-by shootings are extremely common over here, as expected when you live in any type of ghetto environment or low-income neighborhood that's plagued with crime. Our particular neck of the woods wasn't too bad up until these kids on the block and this dumbass new generation started roaming the streets. So I wouldn't expect anyone who didn't grow up in the type of environment I did to understand the gravity of this. When you have to be on high alert all the time when a car passes you by, you always have to assume the worst could happen. When I saw that paintball gun disguised as a real gun, it was a horrible feeling. Real or not, having a weapon pointed at you places you in a helpless, precarious position. I lost 3 relatives to gun violence in the past. 2 of those were drive-bys. One of them was my uncle. He was in 2 drive-by shootings. The first one he survived, and I was there to see it happen. And the second one, yeah, fill in the blanks. But I knew in their particular cases, they lived the thug life. That type of lifestyle will land you in an early grave eventually. I'm clean, on the other hand. I don't bother anyone, nor do I know any of my neighbors like that, so there's nothing that encourages anyone to attack me in that particular manner, other than out of pure wanton violence or thievery. It doesn't matter who you are or how clean you are, you can be a victim no matter how hard you try to repel that sort of violence away from you. I'm already over my original incident. It's easy to just accept that it was just a bunch of stupid, ignorant kids with a twisted sense of humor. But at that moment, and the week that followed it, I was certainly still bitter over it. In my mind, rage, anxiety, humiliation, and all other negative emotions were stinging far more than my bleeding burns and bruises. Now, the only thing I have to say to this new generation of kids is a simple warning. Keep playing stupid games and you'll eventually get yourselves killed when you cross the wrong person with your idiotic pranks. You see it all the time. All the stupid TikTok challenges or other childish buffoonery that makes headlines in the news because they're committing literal crimes for the sake of 15-minute clout. The police are incompetent and will literally not take a case like mine seriously unless I fucking died, which is why I didn't even bother calling them when it happened. And no one around these parts have faith in law enforcement in general, so you youngins need to listen up and stop playing around because someone will take you out with their own hands. In my case, they were lucky that all I had on me was a pocket knife, because the perceived threat of a firearm would warrant return fire in many scenarios like that. I'm certain that I'd have been that wrong person if I had the tool to carry it out. And I think that fact scared me the most out of all of it. That's mainly why I haven't actually bought one yet. I just don't trust myself with it if I'm threatened. I'm just praying that shit calms down in the world with all the inflation and other stuff that I'm sure you should know about by now, so I can have a better time relocating to a safer neighborhood, because I know people are going to tell me, just move, but it's not that simple. You can't just up and move if you're unable to do so immediately, especially with how screwed up the housing market is right now. Either way, you can't truly escape criminals in this day and age, but you can at least lessen your chances of getting hurt by separating yourself from the hot spots. That's all the effort I'm going to devote to this subject. I have no interest in this recollection of sour memories anymore. The new scar on my forearm reminds me of that incident enough already, so I don't really need anything else to keep bugging me. And I only made this video to officially bring closure to it for both my sake and to properly inform you all of what actually happened. I literally turned 30 a few days ago, and I'm getting too old to dwell on bullshit that'll only hold me back if I let it. So yeah, normal videos will resume Friday. That's all. Peace.